Salutations, my name is Michael Riccobono, and I will be the host for the very first episode of the Couch Gambit podcast. We're going to be talking about AI, automation, and other random stuff for this episode. I look forward to starting with all of you. Welcome back to the Couch Gambit podcast. I hope you enjoyed the intro. If it was cringe, I'm sorry. I can't do anything about it. I didn't shoot the damn thing. But let's go ahead and introduce you to everyone. As I said before, I'm Michael Riccobono. Next is going to be Jacob Sizemore, wonderful individual. He's a guy who's basically done the entire setup alongside another individual that I will introduce shortly. But Jacob, why don't you say a few words for the audience, a.k.a. just our parents.
Hey.
We're doomed. Anyways, next up is Mikey Carlisle. However, these other two idiots are going to call him Charles because that's how they know him. Me, I know him as Mikey because we were friends since high school. He's one of my best friends. I love the guy.
And I'm the idiot who can't figure out his own name.
We're doomed. All right. And then finally is Liam McDermott, right? That's your last name.
Yeah, it's my last name. But my tag is Liam Quay on Instagram if you want to give me a follow. I'm just excited to film the show.
Oh, by the way, he's a vegan. We're going to make a lot of jokes about that. But we're going to be talking about AI, automation, and other random things. Stuff I already said in the original intro. But let's get started. Basically, I'm the one who really decided on the topic because I'm a guy who loves the arts. I love writing, all that stuff. And I know that ChatGPT is something that a lot of people are using to do, D&D kind of world building stuff, as well as just doing kind of their own, help them with their novels and stuff like that. So I was just wondering what you guys thought on just the advancement of AI in general and just automation. So
I actually work in a company that's using AI for their own personal benefit. It's not official yet,
right.
Everything that we're doing, but we are using AI to a certain element, like face tracking, facial recognition, and all that stuff. I'm going to be slurring my words throughout the evening. I do apologize. This is Charles' really alcohol that he made. But I don't know. I'm nervous through any advancement. Plus, I'm not a tech guy, despite the guy who settled this up. I'm not really a techie. So all that kind of stuff that I don't necessarily understand kind of freaks me out a little bit. I mean, there are, like we were talking about this before the podcast, there are plenty of circumstances where you find people who their essence has been used online, but they haven't actually given permission or anything. But like you said, which I didn't even know before we actually started this podcast, they can't actually sue the person who used their likeness because it's not created by humans or it's an AI creation of someone else's face or recognition, which sounds illegal. But apparently it's not.
Well, okay, so just to clarify on that, so you can't copyright work that's produced by AI. So in a specific case where an application was rejected for a woman who created a comic book with AI-generated imagery, the images themselves could not be copyrighted, even though that she provided the prompt and selected all the photos that the AI generated. She can't actually copyright the images. She could copyright how the images were organized in the comic book. She can copyright the captions, all of the narratives, the individual interpretation of those images.
right.
But the images themselves could be used by somebody else. So as far as suing somebody's likeness, I'm not sure that... I'm sure that there are probably pending lawsuits, but unless it falls under the definition of libel or slander, I don't know.
There's actually an example of someone that she's an influencer on social media, and her likeness, maybe she's a YouTuber, I don't know, that doesn't matter, but her likeness was used in a porn video. And
wow.
We're gonna start deep, ladies and gentlemen. She was used in a porn video, and clearly it affected her crazily because she was shown on Instagram crying about it. Freaking who won? And she was clearly going after that person. But I think with the advancement of AI, all of that stuff, I think there's definitely a bunch of opportunities for this cringe culture that we live in to make comedy out of it. But at the same time, it just opens up a whole new avenue of kind of what's real, because they're doing the same stuff with like the presidents, Donald Trump, Joe Biden.
Oh,
like you see a bunch of videos of them like
so good though.
Faking their voices.
Like, okay, because real talk. So I do think AI automation, it does scare me somewhat, right? Because actually, quite a big deal. Not in the short term, but the long term, right?
Yeah.
Even though in the long term, my fears probably won't come to fruition. Because by the time I'm like alive or anything like that, because I'll be long dead. If we get to a point where AI is able to basically just make movies for us.
Yeah.
Which that's scary. I don't even know how that would really work, but
I don't know, man.
I guess one question I'd have is how limited is AI to dependent on us? How much is it dependent on us in terms of limitations? Because if we can manage to actually limit AI overall, we can probably slow down everything that we'd be generally concerned about.
But then there's got to be like some guy out there who just knows this technology, who like lives in this small basement, who just like rolls the dice, like, you know what? I'm going to use this for my own personal benefit and just abuse the crap out of it.
Well, a lot of the stuff is open source, where, and I mean, especially in these larger communities. I mean, I know that they're coming out with a lot of AI, digital, like CGI and all that kind of stuff. Corridor Crew did a great video breakdown on it, but they have whole communities built around trying to push this technology to its absolute limit. So it's expanding extremely quickly.
Well, have you seen the anime rock paper scissors video?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it.
That's what I thought you were talking about. So basically, I remember when I initially pitched this topic to you, Mikey. Right? Yeah. I believe this was before that video even came out.
It did. Yeah.
And then when that video came out, I was blown away.
Yeah.
Okay? Because, and again, don't get me wrong, I'm scared for the long term, but in my lifetime, I think it's fascinating that we're getting to a point where you don't necessarily have to be super skilled at a certain like skill set, right? If you're not great at animation, now we're getting to a point where AI can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
Well, yeah,
right?
I mean, even as simple as the logo for the podcast, before we actually got it professionally done, all of the concept designs and all that I was coming up with was literally on my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of this iPhone their photo app can isolate different elements of a photo. You just click and hold, and AI determines what's on the foreground of whatever you're trying to select, and it'll isolate that. And then it'll put it onto a blank background where you can use just that individual element. And so whenever I was trying to pitch it for to the guy who ended up creating the logo for it, I was able to isolate exactly what the elements we needed from him were. And I mean, it sped up the whole process. I wouldn't have been able to do it before all this.
I feel like that's a good angle to go at it. Like, it's still, because it still keeps the human element intact. Like, you were able to create what you wanted to show him, and it's like, this is what I want. Can you create the rest of it? That's kind of cool. What freaks me out a little bit, I mean, I'm stupid. I don't know.
Same.
Yeah, I don't know too much, but what kind of freaks me out a little bit, because I've seen so much artwork happen as of recent, and it looks great. Don't get me wrong, it looks amazing, but it's AI created. It's like, if anyone wants to see anything artwork-wise, like, I want to see a dragon in space fighting Darth Vader. It can create the most beautiful imagery of all time,
right?
But like, it takes the human aspect out of it. So, in a way that kind of unnerves me a little bit.
And now, granted, when you actually look at a lot of this artwork, on first glance, it does look really nice. But one thing that the AI art generation can't really do well, it seems a lot of the time, is like the fingers, the hands, right? That shit looks whack.
Yeah.
All right. But again, with time, it's just going to improve. And my fear, right, the thing that really makes me think about it is the long-term ramifications. When do we get to the point where artists themselves are no longer required to make art? Okay? Because already, like, AI art's already fascinating to me. And what's also fascinating is ChatGPT. It can, if you can give it a writing prompt and it does it for you, it's not necessarily good, but the fact is, it is much more efficient than any normal author is. Okay? And what scares me is that maybe in 10, 20 years' time, it'll be able to replicate George R.R. Martin or J.K. Rowling. Look, if you don't like J.K. Rowling, it's whatever. But fact of the matter is, she had a bestseller. Okay, but
do you think there's a potential for just an overall rejection on the subject of the human element of the artwork? Do you think there's a potential for the rejection of the lack of that human element in AI produced art if it ends up becoming more mainstream?
well, here's the thing: the average consumer doesn't care. As long as they receive content, they are happy. We're already kind of seeing really that a lot of our TV shows and movies, they follow a certain formula, right? It panders to audiences, okay? AI probably can do that just as effectively now, okay? That's what I mean, because your general audience, like, they go to the movies, right? They watch their dumb movie that panders to all the things that they like politically, philosophically, all that stuff, and they're okay with it. Sure, you're going to have the vocal minority call out saying, this is not art, or this is not a good film in an objective sense, which, yes, you can objectify a film's quality, all right? I know a lot of people like to say that, it's subjective whether you like a film or not. That's true. But, that's whether you like it or not. You can dictate if a film is good or not through an objective lens, though.
What I'm hoping for is that this copyright rule does have a chilling effect on what you're talking about, where instead of allowing people to just generate everything through AI imagery, dude, you're killing me. Sorry.
Oh no, it's still going.
Yeah, no, instead of just generating dozens or hundreds of stories, if you want ownership over what you're talking about, you won't be able to get it. You'd have to have some kind of a human element to it.
Right.
And you'd have to define specifically what that human element was.
Sure.
So while you could mimic it and imitate it very, very closely, I don't even know how that would work, because if you told an AI generator to mimic something like Tolkien or a work that's actually currently copyrighted, if that would impede on that copyright, since essentially it's pulling elements from the original work,
right,
and creating a new story out of that.
Sure, yeah.
So I don't know how that would
That
play
would probably
out.
likely fall under the same copyright laws of just a general remix, because if you remix content, you're generally not subjected to the copyright laws.
Oh, okay. That's interesting, actually.
It's kind of like the same thing of if you are a filmmaker or like an indie filmmaker and you use any label, Coke label, Pepsi label, stuff like that, the general fear amongst a lot of people is that if you use that label in the video, that you're going to get taken down because you see the label. Generally speaking, if you're drinking a Pepsi or you're drinking a Coke in a scene and you just use it for its intended purpose, then you're fine. But if you use that Coke to stab a person, like break glass stab person, then Coke's gonna look like, I don't want our label to be used as that, so they would take it down. But generally speaking, it will be fine. So I'm not actually sure what that brings to that conversation, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there is a difference between like parody, because you can use elements from copyrighted materials to make parody, but you can't use it to mimic that art to try and monetize the community that engages with that. You can't mimic the original art, in a way that's too similar to it.
That's what freaks me out about taking what you said, taking the human element away from that. Mm-hmm. Because and I kind of agree with you what you brought up a second ago, and I kind of think that you're going for like the Disney products, the Marvel, like the big corporation movies, where they definitely follow a formula. Business-wise, it makes a lot of sense to create a formula and to generate it to the audience. Yeah. But creatively, if you're because I'm a filmmaker, I like making movies, I like messing with my movies, doing my own kinds of stories, and I'm sure a bunch of other people do, and they want the ability to be creative in that system. But if they are subjected to that kind of system, that corporate system, then it's going to affect the human element, it's going to affect creativity, and it's going to be kind of what the Marvel movies are turning out, just generic stuff.
And that's the thing. Bottom line is, right, filmmaking is it's another business. Not just another business, really. It's one of the biggest types of businesses now, right? That's, you make a lot of money if you make a fucking blockbuster at this point, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
And now imagine how much money they would be saving, right? By
No, bring it closer. Bring it closer. Bring it closer.
Oh, sorry. Again, this is episode 1.
I need you to swallow your mic.
I need to. Okay, I need to swallow it.
No, now I like. Oh yeah, you're good now.
I'm sure. But what I'm trying to say though is that already they make so much money and they already do a formulaic type of process. Now imagine how much more money they would save by having AI do basically almost the entirety of the work for them. Okay.
But they would lose ownership over it. That's the problem.
Right,
Disney
no.
is one of the most notorious copyright claimers in the world, and they would lose the ownership over their own product if they started outsourcing it to AI. That's what I'm hoping would have a chilling effect
Well,
on it.
what's to stop them from like buying the software itself?
Because it's still not human created.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, even if ChatGPT started using its own AI bot to generate the same comic book that the lady was rejected for, it's still an algorithm that's pumping out every bit of it. Even if it was the human itself that created the algorithm, I mean, they would lose ownership over it. They would lose copyrightability.
And so even if Disney, for example, like, I don't know, funded a project to make their own AI software.
The way that I would see this working would be that they would have AI pump out the framework for all of their movies and stuff like that, and then insert human writers and stuff like that.
Which again would probably cut down a lot of the filmmaking process, the
Most
time
likely.
frame on it, right?
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
I mean, to be honest with you, that's what a lot of people have been shouting at Marvel as a reason. Everyone has really caught on to the Marvel formula at this point. I'm not just trying to crap on Marvel right now, but I kind of am trying to crap on Marvel.
We are.
Everyone
We are at
knows.
this point.
Everyone knows the Marvel
Sue us.
formula. Yeah.
Do it.
Well, that's
Great. We have no subscribers. Do it.
that's another thing I want to add.
You'll get nothing.
You just called on the demon sue us. Kathleen Kennedy walks in the room crap, you're not even Marvel. What are you doing here?
Well, that's another thing I want to add is that general audiences have become tired of all the formulaic movies that have been released by Marvel. They've become tired of all the formulaic political elements that have been present in modern movies. My main points when it comes to if movies, God forbid, were ever to become AI generated, I do think over time audiences would start to realize the lack of a human element, and it would ultimately end up costing studios money to pursue that in the first place. Because ultimately people want movies that touch them. I feel like when we just say general audiences are dumb, we don't give them enough credit. I think that audiences go in, they want to experience a movie. They want to have fun with a movie. They want to relate to the characters in a film. And if it's completely AI generated, AI is never going to be able to mimic the human experience within a piece of media like an actual person can.
Yeah. It's a difference between a craft and just going by the numbers. You can say the newest Top Gun Maverick movie is very formulaic.
Great
the story
film, by
is
the
very
way.
yeah, the story is very generic, some would say. Even if you love that movie, it's a very generic story. But the craft in making that movie is the reason people got out of their house to go see that movie, and it's one of the top grossing movies of last year. And it's a great movie. It's a wonderful movie. It made me happy to go to the theaters again. And a similar story could be made for some of the Marvel movies, and even to a certain degree some of the Star Wars movies. But there's not the same type of execution, and there's not the same human element. You can create some amazing CGI effects in the Marvel movies. Even the new Ant-Man movie has some amazing CGI effects. But it's very different than a human element of attaching a camera to a freaking actual plane that's driving around. That's crazy. Sorry.
Yeah, you're talking about the new one?
The
brand new one?
The Top Gun? Oh, the new Ant-Man. Yeah, the new Ant-Man movie.
Okay, yeah.
It's got some cool stuff.
You saw the brand new one though?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was awful.
Yeah, it wasn't worth it.
It was a terrible film.
It's
by
all,
the way.
I mean,
it was
yeah,
awful.
it wasn't.
It was truly awful.
The thing is, I can't bring myself to go see another Marvel film. The only reason I've even been going to watch any recent Marvel films is because my parents like to go out and watch them. But I'm so sick of the Marvel formula. I think that it's just been overdone. I just think that it's just generally been overdone. It's starting to get too political, and it's turning off a lot of audiences, including me. And it's just I don't really enjoy going to these anymore. Like there's also a general lack of quality. Like I watched Thor Ragnarok.
Bro.
The quality of the actual filmmaking itself is worse than a movie from 2008 with Iron Man, which was actually put together well. Even the CGI in modern Marvel films doesn't even compare to the CGI work done in earlier Marvel films such as Iron Man and Hulk, which granted isn't that great. But
hold on, Ragnarok or Love and Thunder?
Oh,
Love and Thunder,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
my bad.
Okay, because audience, mom, you saw that. I was like, Ragnarok, that was a great movie though. No, Love and Thunder, absolutely hot garbage. I was about to fight you about Ragnarok, but I realized no.
Well,
typical vegan.
No. Now I will say this:
Wrong about everything.
With Ragnarok, I didn't have the same impression of it being an amazing movie. I didn't necessarily think it was terrible, but it just didn't do it for me. It felt a little too sitcom-y for me, and it had a lot of the elements of the typical Marvel humor, which I'm just generally not a fan of.
To be fair on that, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of aspects of these Marvel movies that really drive me crazy. But I mean, it was with Thor: Love and Thunder specifically. It was very intentional that they were throwing in a lot of political views and stuff like that. And I don't know that you would actually get that with AI. I mean, it's actually kind of funny some of the developments of people intentionally manipulating AI to spew some some pretty some very hateful stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, maybe it would liberate some, but I don't know. I mean, that would be something that these huge corporations would always try to insert.
There was some guy who posted as of recent who kind of took note of all like Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Obama voiceovers that are AI generated.
So good.
Oh, it's so good. But he took note as like this single like channel has like has turned all the political divide. They've united it under like we like this crowd.
That's true.
Honestly,
AI has united us.
At least for this one thing, like whether you're a
Yes.
Democrat or a Republican, like man, it's funny.
Have you
It's
seen?
so
Right?
funny.
You can enjoy it.
To see Obama and Trump just like going head to head in like a D&D match, and they're like, "Good game, bro. Good game." Like,
or better yet, when I
it's
hear
so
them
funny.
playing Yu-Gi-Oh, oh brother.
Have you seen the one where they're like jacked and then they're talking about going to the gym and
Yes.
hitting their reps and all that?
This is why I
That
have
was
my
the
phone on
loudest
silent,
thing I've
Liam.
ever heard in my
gosh,
life.
oh my- that was better than.
I usually have my phone on silent. It just happens the one time I don't have it on
I
silent.
usually
Typical
have my
vegan
phone on
for
silent as
filming.
it screams.
Disappointment. Now, real quick though. So my thing with Liam, when you said that AI is incapable of mimicking the human element, right? My thing is, at one point we probably thought it was impossible to reach the stars. Probably thought it was impossible to fly at one point. I mean, I would think that we'll get to a point where literally it's like fucking Halo, where we have Cortana who can fucking be almost human.
Yeah, I
you
can
know?
see your point on that. I guess for
I'm just
me-
saying, like, again, like, I'm not saying short term that's something that's going to happen. Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm with it.
You brought up
Halo 4
Cortana.
Cortana, best Cortana.
Yo.
Well,
Even-
visually.
yo.
Even on the
visually.
fact of the short
Yo.
term, I mean, I can see your point there, and I guess when it comes to the human elements, I have a bit of a normalcy bias because I guess it's more of I don't want to accept the fact that AI would necessarily be able to mimic that human element. It may be able to, but I can't imagine it.
Well, of course you
Imitating that
can't
human
imagine
Gosh, Liam, be
element.
open-minded.
But I do want to get something like when you talk about the long term. I mean, we're talking about technology that is very recent for the most part, and I can see this advancing to a scary place within the next 15 years.
Easily.
Oh, God.
100%.
Easily. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, when you're talking about human element, all it needs to do is mimic the, neuron pathways that the human brain.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already trying to map that kind of stuff out.
Because again, my fear is that what happens when we get to a point where not even the arts, writing and whatnot is not protected by like just the human soul essentially, right?
Yeah.
Because if not even like because if automation AI can do all the arts for us, right? Then what's left for humanity to do now when it comes to striving for things or just to be in the workforce, right? Because automation, right? AI, they can do like a lot of the logical stuff for us, right? I mean, in fact, in Fort Worth, Texas, we have a McDonald's that's all automation. So then every McDonald's might just be automation. Every Wendy's might do that. Every fast food place might do that. So then it's like, okay, well, what is left for humans to do? Packaging, AI or automation can do that. So then we get to the point where now we only have the arts. Okay, people are trying to make a living doing that, but we might get to a point where we can't even compete with AI when it comes to drawing, writing, filmmaking. What is left for humans to do other than to consume?
See, there was a period in time when I kind of was pro automation in a sense because I see things like the money counting machines in banks, which ultimately did actually end up replacing jobs, but it also helped expand banks further, which provided more jobs outside of just being a typical bank teller and actually made being a bank teller more personal. And I thought of automation more in a sense like that, where it simply replaces tasks in a job and it allows not only the people that actually work in the industry to do more outside of that simple task, but it just makes their job, it can also have the potential of making their job easier if they don't do more outside of that. But seeing the rate of how everything's going, especially with a McDonald's that can just do everything automated, it seems like a relatively simple task if you really break it down, but it's still very impressive, and advancement could put this in a place where we have a genuine concern on our hands.
And that is actually. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Fuck Jacob.
I'm full of references here. There was an interview between Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson.
Oh, hell yes.
Where it was, Carlson was asked straight up, would you support, or would you, if you were president, I think it was how it was phrased, would you support a ban on AI taking over certain fields like trucking? And he said yes, like straight up would ban AI taking over trucking specifically, just because of how big of a field it is. The whole learn to code movement really kind of rattled a lot of people, because you train your entire life to do one certain task, and all of a sudden you're pushed out of that job, and now they're saying go learn something else, especially something like coding or some highly technical field that people just don't get.
And about ChatGPT with coding, right? So right now it's not perfect, but already you can instruct ChatGPT to give you you can give it a single command of write code to do this function, and it will do that for you. Now I've heard different people in the same field give me different responses of it does it well or it does it all right. But one thing it does do well, for the most part, that I've heard unanimously, is that you ask ChatGPT to identify an error in this code of like what is causing the issue I'm having, and it'll identify it like that, right? So already, right, with just what we have now, coding is made so much easier, and it seems like just AI can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, at least the foundation.
Maybe. Man, that gets into a really weird conversation. Again, a lot of companies copyright their code as well. But yeah, either way, what we're talking about is putting people out of work. So I'm not sure. Now we're just talking about putting more people out of work. So the whole idea, the whole idea of like what you're saying doesn't provide an alternative for anybody. It just puts them deeper in the hole of not having any work.
That's nothing about what this podcast is trying to do. We're here to talk crap and not give solutions.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah,
in
no,
that case,
you want to hear us complain about stuff? We'll give it to you.
No,
it's why I make drinks for them.
I do want to follow up on your point about the whole Shapiro and Carlson interview and banning automation for truck drivers. how does everyone here feel in general about government regulation over AI and over automation? I mean, personally, I don't really take any kind of a libertarian viewpoint on this because, again, we're not talking about like government infringing on human rights if we're restricting AI. I think, if anything, we are just helping people in general keep their jobs, and I think AI can be a real threat. Now, in general, at the moment, I don't really have too much of a worry about automation and AI, but I can see how it could be potentially become a threat in, say, the next 10, 15 years.
I want to ask you a question. At the end of the day, are you pro or against the automation of AI? In those kinds of like middle class situations.
It's complicated. I'm pro AI and automation to a very limited degree. I don't really support going above and beyond with it because I just see it doing more harm than good if we go too far with it. But in some cases, if we can keep it limited, we can keep it controlled, I'm all for it.
That's the problem with like implementing it. And like, here's the thing I love about the American society. You can implement this AI software and then people will have their fun with it. Like I said, the Joe Biden, Donald Trump, all that like kind of AI where they're taking their voices and they're just making them play D&D. That kind of stuff is hilarious. But you know the stuff is going to be abused at the end of the day. So, and that is not to say like it's just going to be the American public. I, again, support individual freedoms and everything, but this will definitely be abused by corporate businesses to the degree where they're going to figure out a way to take the human element out.
Mikey?
The difficulty of this is that before it used to be where there was an upfront investment in new machinery, automation, that sort of thing that would put people out of jobs. Now there's not even that upfront cost. It's literally, it could be implemented as soon as the technology is available at a very, very, very low cost. I think the only way that this works is if you require these companies to have some sort of pension program to support all the people that they're laying off. But then we go just deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of how people in the future get employed. So
Yes.
short term, if you're going to implement it into a way that, or in a way that it would replace an entire industry, you would have to first require some sort of pension program. There's no question about it. You can't just come out with a new source of technology that just replaces millions of jobs overnight without some sort of program in place
Right.
to protect
Liam,
those
you're
jobs.
wanting to say something?
Say consequence in that matter. I'm just like, I want to go further on this point on the overall regulation of it. Like, how does everyone feel about restricting it to the point where that's not even a concern?
Well, okay, so for me, I don't like placing restrictions for the most part on really just things in general, right? I mean, if anything, I've always been under the belief that if you want to restrict, if you want, whether it's AI, alcohol consumption, gambling, right? It's a state by state issue, right? But like this is probably like a federal thing or just something with the world. But what I really wanted to say real quickly though is the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because, and I kind of mentioned it before, is when we get to a point where humans don't have anything to do, right? How do we function as a society? Okay? So if we have nothing to strive for, right? If there's nothing for us to do because really everything is taken care of for us, okay? Doesn't this eventually lead to the downfall of humanity?
I mean, that kind of just is a statement on our generation as a whole.
I mean, absolutely, yeah.
Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily a comment on AI, that's just comment on human condition.
The problem is that it's no longer humans creating the times; it's
Yeah.
AI just dominating everything.
Getting deep.
No, because
Super
again,
deep, very
that's the fear, right? Because I'm not scared in the short term of like, does this affect my life, right? But I can't help but think in the long term, right? If there's nothing for someone to strive for, right? Then what's if you don't have like purpose in life, right? Then are you really going to do anything to better yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, stuff like that, right? Because I fear that we'll get to a point where the only thing that humans will have room to do will be to become athletes, maybe, right? But then if that's the only thing that humans can do, well, that's such a saturated market. And obviously, you're born with certain advantages over other people, right? I mean, if you're born 5'9" or 5'8", I mean, I'm sorry, you're probably not going to make it in the NBA. I'm just saying, right? But
that's tallest.
It's just being realistic.
As a tallest.
I don't know. It's probably going to be a thing in like a month.
But yeah, no, because like I remember I had a conversation with you, Mikey, where I don't want to say argument, because an argument kind of you visualize it as like, we're yelling at each other. But
Right.
Hey, see that guy? See that guy? Screw that guy.
Yeah.
Whoa. I love all of you. But basically, it's without really something, like to do to make money, right? Or to just improve yourself in a professional manner. I mean, what is the point of doing anything, right? Why not just stay home and be in, like, you just use VR, virtual reality, to just have all your fantasies come true, all right? Because if AI takes care of all your wants and needs, you are just a consumer at that point. You're not proactive in generating value.
Are we strictly talking in the sense of AI, like taking up your needs in the business sense? Because there are things that you can pursue outside of simply going to work that are meaningful in your daily life. I mean, you can advance your knowledge of a vast array of subjects. You can work out and actually like improve yourself in that manner. Now, don't get me wrong. Work in general does provide a huge element in self-improvement, but I do want to give the benefit of the doubt here.
Sure.
People say that a lot, but whenever it comes down to it, a lot of times work is also just a way of getting out of the house. And a lot of people who don't have that need to make money and bring in an income have no other reason to go out of the house and aren't self-motivated enough to do that.
The reason people become successful is because we live in a world where if you can't bring value, right, if you can't bring a certain skill set to the world, then you're going to be left behind. Mm-hmm. But with automation and AI, right, if that takes over writing, it takes over art, it takes over being a McDonald's fucking employee, okay? Reality is, there's no room for the human element for people to go out in the workforce and better themselves constantly. Because yes, you can say in a mythical fantasy world that, well, I have all the time in the world to improve myself as a writer, right? But at that point you're doing it for fun, because the average consumer doesn't care about the human element. They just want their daily fix. Mm-hmm. And that's reality. Okay. Yes, there's the vocal minority that says we need to protect the sanctity of art and writing, filmmaking, all that stuff. But there's a reason why Disney is still making billions of dollars.
To that point, the only point that I would argue is I would bring up George R.R. Martin for a second. His book series, the Game of Thrones book series, I'm not specifically sure which.
The Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, sure. The Song of Ice and Fire. I'm not specifically sure which book this is because I've never read the books. I've only seen the Game of Thrones series.
Sure.
But he wrote The Red Wedding. Who's familiar with The Red Wedding, by the way?
I think, Mikey, you're the only one who hasn't seen Game of Thrones.
I watched the clip of it.
No, I haven't. I haven't.
He's seen the clip.
Okay, well,
I haven't seen Game of Thrones either.
Oh,
so
okay.
We're together on that one.
Yeah, all right. Okay, well, I'm only talking to you because these
idiots,
pieces of garbage,
awful, uncultured.
Don't matter. You don't matter as a person. I'm sorry. So, on that topic, like the Red Wedding, if you know about it, Game of Thrones wise, like it is a shocking Greek tragedy event in TV and book.
Yeah.
And it is a absolutely shocking moment. But the thing about that makes it impactful is that it doesn't destroy the story, because some of the main characters like die in a absolutely tragic and horrific way.
Brutal, yeah.
Absolutely brutal way. But it's betrayal, it's everything. But the thing is, like, that it doesn't stop the story in its tracks. It continues the story in a very natural and interesting way. And I feel like if AI takes over in that element, then we're going to get more formula, more stuff like that. And even if we get plot twists. Something like The Red Wedding.
Yeah.
Where it's going to be more Game of Thrones Season 8 instead of Game of Thrones Season 4. And what I mean by that, it's going to be more shock value rather than more story intrigue, if that makes sense.
Right.
We're not going to get that human element that makes it personal. The Red Wedding felt personal. It felt like an attack on our soul. But at the same time, it forwarded the story in a very understanding, natural way. The characters around the Red Wedding reacted accordingly to how that event would translate in reality.
Sure.
Well,
instead of like Season 8, where it would just be shock value and that's it. Sorry.
Well, on the subject of plot twist, the whole point of a good plot twist is it's supposed to be set up in a way to where the audience member could logically guess it, and I guess to an extent, if we're talking about AI and the advancement of that going into storytelling, how well would it be able to leave those small hints and give the audience the ability to
Right. Yeah, because right now, ChatGPT, for example, lacks the skill set required or the imagination required to do these kind of small intricate details, right? And that's reality. But again, we're talking about like the long term, right? But here's the thing, though. The fact of the matter is, ChatGPT, where it's at right now with being able to just write little short stories for you, it's somewhat impressive. As bad as it is as a writer, it can still, the fact it's just that efficient. It's just
also
so
a starting
fast.
point.
It's a starting point. Exactly. It's the foundation, right? If it can do, like coding for you and, try to debate philosophy, which it doesn't do very well. It really doesn't. But again, it's just a starting point, right? And as I said before, in the past, we never thought we would be able to fly with, the birds or whatever. We didn't think we could reach the stars, right? We never thought we'd be able to communicate with people, instantaneously across the world, right? But we've proven time and time again that we can achieve greatness, right? And, having AI be able to replicate the human soul is just eventually the next step for humanity. And as cool as it is, right, potentially, it's such a scary thought.
Do you think that would be the end of human achievement if AI was able to replicate that element of the human soul?
Well, and yes, actually, because in the long term, right, when AI is able to basically do everything that a human can do, right, at that point, humanity, we are just consumers, right? And I've said this before. When humanity is we're just consumers, right? We don't strive to improve constantly, and naturally, birth rates are going to decrease, right? The dating market's not going to be a thing because we don't care about being our best selves to find a partner because we can live our best fantasies in VR at this,
You're sounding very shockingly similar to what's actually happening right now.
Well, yeah, because even now, today, right, when it comes to the dating market, right, most people, when they go out, right, like they don't have the interpersonal skills to really pick up women or to pick up men, right? Men lack the skills more than women do because women have it easy. I'm sorry, it sounds sexist, I know, but in the dating market, women have all the power. But
women just got to be kind of
We say
cute.
this as as 4 single dudes.
That's all women. They just got to be kind of cute.
Okay, look, all right, okay, maybe I am just trying to make myself feel better, but. But
as he sits with an anime pillow literally next to him.
She is beautiful. Fuck you. She is gorgeous. But right now, okay, a lot of men and just people in general lack the skill set to hold interpersonal conversations in person, right? Because a lot of the time we just connect with each other through Facebook, Discord, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff, okay? When it comes to dating, swipe right. That's all it takes at this point, right? And it's not just trying to find someone to date or to get to know them. It's just to bang them.
Thrust.
Yeah. No, it's just as a society, we're becoming weaker and weaker. And that's because we live a constant life of decadence. Our lifestyles are so much better than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And that's just reality. It just is. Because someone who doesn't make a lot of money today, they can still enjoy the comfort of the internet, of streaming services for somewhat affordable rates.
Even COVID, where everyone was raving about their own personal suffering, still turned on Netflix that evening and watched the next episode of whatever TV series that they were wanting to watch. Our suffering is not even we're is literally the definition of first world problems.
I almost wonder if there would eventually be a rejection of
like
of
when
AI.
when the extent of our of the things we get angry about is simply wearing a mask, which granted I got tired of it after a year. I said F this, I'm walking in. When the extent of our problems is really that, it really kind of does put things into perspective.
Yeah, and then Mikey, you wanted to say something.
Well, that was I mean, I don't know. I mean, really, it's difficult because we won't know until it reaches a tipping point.
And by the time it reaches that tipping point, we might not even be alive.
It could and it could just be too late at that point.
Yeah, okay,
you
true,
never
true,
know if it's gonna rebound or if it's just gonna descend into what you're talking about is just pure consumerism and degeneracy. I mean, it's giving like people having that purpose, something to work for, something to live for, is important. I mean, you see all these people who have elevated them above blue collar work and that sort of thing.
Right.
You look at their lives, and it's just I wouldn't want to engage in any of it. You have more people who are down to earth, working their own jobs, supporting their own families, living their own lives, and it's far more wholesome. And I think that there is some value to preserving that kind of a lifestyle. So maybe from that angle, you start creating regulations around AI, but I don't know. I mean, what we're talking about it could be equivalent to past to technological developments where machinery has come in to supplement human labor and move us forward. I mean, we would have never gotten to the point that we are now without the Industrial Revolution. There's no way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
But then there's that next step of this literally could replace us, and it could autonomously find ways to replace other fields too. This isn't just some way of people saying, I think this solution could be found, or there's a better solution to this problem.
Do you think that the problem of AI would be a problem of AI potentially forming its own autonomy? Because the way I see it is ultimately be controlled by a few people, like a few individuals that would have a great power over dictating the extent of AI on our lives, not AI alone.
That actually would scare me more, to be honest with you.
Oh no, I totally agree with you. Yeah, but that's the way I see it. I don't see the problem of AI necessarily being a problem of AI itself taking over a life, but it would be AI being manipulated by a select group of individuals taking over our life.
It's like totally non-biased government systems that are implemented in our lives to keep us in check, but they are 100% biased.
100%.
Yeah, I mean that gives me more than enough cause to want to put a stop to this right away.
Well, yeah, that goes back to the whole point of restriction on AI. Restriction on AI overall. I find it ridiculous that anyone would have a quote-unquote problem with that, because we're not violating any human liberty by restricting AI when it could potentially be a serious threat to human liberty in itself, or human, let's say, for liberty in the sense of being able to actually pursue happiness.
Well, you could say you're stopping human ingenuity at that point, because maybe there's someone who is just striving to complete this project and just perfect this AI. Maybe you're stopping human ingenuity. I'm playing devil's advocate.
No,
And
there,
here's the thing,
there is a
and-
potential
on,
for
Liam.
that at the same time. But when the consequence of such an action can lead to mass unemployment, can lead to just this general population becoming a population of consumerists and nothing more, then I think that can be taken into serious consideration when we're limiting is, hey, maybe don't take AI to the extent of ruining everyone's lives.
So
Yeah, please don't.
And now here's my thing though, because at the end of the day, advancement is all about making things easier and more efficient for people. Okay, and so wouldn't surprise me, about getting to the point where people no longer have to work for anything, right? Because again, that's just what advancement is, right? That's what, when we have, advance in technology, advance in just the methods of how we accomplish things, right? We try to make it to where the human element is not included as much anymore. And I know we're talking about government limiting that kind of stuff, right? But why would government necessarily want to limit that kind of thing when the consumer, right, the market, decides, no, that's fine? Because at the end of the day, if consumers don't have to, strain themselves to do something, then again, this is the average person we're talking about. They don't care about the potential long-term consequences of something. They just care about the short-term, like, does this make things easier for me now?
Yeah.
But is that necessarily like a reason to not restrict it? Is the fact that it would just be easier for people to be consumerist?
Well, that's like that feels like almost a corporate mentality kind of thing. Like, if the corporate mentality is going to increase your short-term pleasure in certain things, it doesn't really care if this is going to benefit you in the long run. It just cares about making a certain amount.
Again,
so it has relegated you to a certain amount of money, whatever it is.
And here's the thing: it's gonna sound like kind of a tangent, but there's a reason, right? Why there's the 1%, right? Because the 1%, they are the millionaires / billionaires because they look at the long term.
Yeah.
Right. They're the ones that they don't care about their short term comfort. They are willing to do things that other people would never even imagine doing.
Yeah.
Okay. The average person is, I'm sorry to say this, right? But our average is just, we're dumb. We don't care about the long term. We just care about instant gratification, right? It's why so many people flock to Facebook, flock to Twitter, Instagram, because whenever you make a post and people like your post, okay, it feels good. It's the dopamine hit, right? It's just about short-term gratification now. That's the world we live in. And the internet, technology, it fuels that every day at a constant basis. And so many people are the average kind of like our way of living has improved versus what it was in the before, but our drive to succeed, it feels like it's dropped.
This might be going a little bit off tangent, and I apologize if I'm taking it a little bit offside. But there's a good side to being like the normal person, and that is, and again, I've talked to you about this plenty of times. It's being content. It's like pure contentment.
Oh yeah, contentment is the ultimate form of happiness.
100%. And like I bring my grandpa into this conversation quite a bit of times when I talk to you about this thing. He's a relatively like normal human being, not super rich, not super well off there, but he lives in the now. He's a gardener. My grandma's also a gardener. Her joy in life is taking weeds out of her garden. Like the simple things are what give them pleasure and that kind of stuff. And like normal contentment, I'd say, is what separates like the well-off normal people from like the well-off like higher end type of people. If that makes sense.
Mikey, were you wanting to say something?
Go ahead.
No, because like I saw that like you wanted to jump in, and I don't mind jumping in after you. I really don't. So
No, go ahead. I need to think about it.
okay, that's fair. So the thing with contentment, right, is yes, the example you gave is that's a beautiful way of looking at it. But a lot of people who are content with their way of life are also super fucking depressed.
Sir, I'm not saying that's certain example. I'm giving a really good personal example of my own family who is content in a life that's based in hard work.
What you just said goes in direct opposition to what contentment is. It represents in a state of being peacefully happy. I mean, the fact that saying that people that are content are depressed goes against the whole idea of being content.
You're right. But that's the thing, though. A lot of people who are they view that they are content with their way of life, right? Like there's a lot of the time there's people who think they are content, right? Because like they accept their way of life, they accept their lot in life, but that's because, again, everything is comes a lot easier nowadays, right? Anything you could ever want is just at the touch of your fingertips.
Well, I think what you're confusing is contentment and complacent. Like a lot of people are complacent in their situation, but contentment in itself is
it's
ultimately
genuine.
it's genuine contentment is being in the ultimate form of happiness, where you don't feel like you need anything else. You are perfectly happy where you are.
There's still
You're genuinely there.
The difficulty is finding that complacency and what makes you happy, because discipline, if you were to ask them how they got to that point, discipline would probably be number one. The ability to
100%.
self-regulate, because
Right.
if the first thing that made you happy is what you consider to be complacency,
Yeah.
it turns into gluttony.
Exactly. Yes.
There's a huge difference between somebody who has struggled their entire life and worked for everything that they have to find simplicity in their life, and somebody who has found what makes them happy, a distraction,
Yes.
and just involves themselves completely in that. And if from day one you're provided the opportunity to go immerse yourself into literally anything and everything, and you find something that makes you really happy,
Yes.
it just spirals downward.
And I think that's what I was trying to get at personally, right?
Yeah, it's a generational gap for one, because
not gonna
my
ruin our
grandpa,
lives.
like when I gave an example to my grandpa and my grandma, they come from a completely different generation. They're not up to date with technology. They have a
Right.
flip phone, for the love of God. Like
Yeah.
they are still,
Dude, I
they're
miss
still
my
like
razor
they're
phone.
behind in technology. But the fact that they are happier than most of the people who are alive now today, with every convenience that they have available. They have a iPhone that has every available technology. They have a camera, they have a calculator, they have all this crap available to them. They have all the news outlets they ever need on their phone. They have all this stuff, and then they're not happy. But my grandpa and my grandma, who have a very limited technology, who have a garden that they take care of every day, that they work on every day, that the house that's clean, that's taken care of, that has pictures of their family, they have a very fulfilled and wonderful life. And it's not based on anything that's in the now, in the pleasurable sense, like the immediate
Right.
pleasures. They have built their life based on hard work and working for each other. It is a life based on true contentment. That's
Yeah.
not based on momentary happiness,
Absolutely.
but based on like building a life for themselves and building a life that's, again, I'm a Christian family. That's
Yeah.
building a life that's honorary to the God that we worship. But again, like that kind of
And
sense.
you know what? And here's the thing. That's beautiful. Like that truly is. Like that's awesome, right? And I think the thing that Mikey and I were really trying to get at, right, is that I really think that it's not impossible, right? Nothing is truly, like impossible in this kind of regard, but like finding being content is a very difficult thing to do with this day and age for our generation and for the for Gen Z and millennials, right? Because the thing is, we constantly seek our hit of dopamine, right? And the way we get that is through Facebook posts, YouTube, all that stuff, right? Connecting with people on the internet, right? A lot of people, instead of facing the reality of their actual lives, they try to make it seem like on Facebook that their lives are great, right? Everything's fine. Everything's not just fine. Everything's perfect, right? Because how often really, granted, I actually don't go on Facebook often, but I'd imagine a lot of people just post the quote best parts of their life on Facebook. They don't like to share the negative aspects of their life, right? Because why would you want to do that, right? You want people to like your posts. Okay, when people like your posts, it's that dopamine hit, right? It's the same thing when you gamble. It's the same thing when you drink, okay? And at the end of the day, drinking, gambling, Facebook, it's fun, but too much is dangerous, right?
Well, and I kind of want to add to this is that when it comes to the
Thanks a
dopamine
lot for
rush,
making really good drinks.
I think
I need
Anytime, but-
more.
We are out, man. It's just gonna be.
Hey,
Jack.
don't drink that much.
I'll
I
take
need
it.
more.
I think that a
Fuck
lot of
Jack,
people
by the way.
have too much of a problem with just being bored. I mean, I don't necessarily see a problem with just sitting there being bored and doing nothing. Like just not in the sense of your overall betterment, but just in a momentary instance. Like a lot of people feel like they need to have an instant gratification on something. And ultimately, people look at their phone when they're bored. They're sitting there doing nothing. They look at their phone to get that hit of gratification instead of just sitting there and just like actually appreciating the moment of just being there.
Ironically,
and
that's
doing
how a
nothing.
lot of porn addiction starts. Like, I'm bored. What am I doing right now?
Oh, really is that? I mean, but I think that it's come down to a problem of just us not being bored anymore. Like we're never bored. We're always looking at something online. We're always able to watch TV. We're always able to go online and do all these things that we otherwise would just not do if we had the ability to sit down and just be bored, just relax.
Well, I mean, that's the thing though. Like because like everything is available to you, right? I mean, for me, it takes a special kind of show to really elevate my sense of boredom, and that's just for me. Again, this is anecdotal evidence, right? So take it. Like you don't have to take this as gospel or factual, right? But the thing is, everything, when you have access to literally everything at the touch of your finger, what are you doing? Unbelievable. Man, I've got one guy taking a piss, and I've got another guy who's just walking around. What are you looking at?
Trying to make sure your camera's recording.
Oh, fair. Can it still see my beautiful face?
Absolutely.
My big thing is it's just we live in a world of instant gratification. If you want something done, just type something on the internet. You can find something to alleviate your boredom for a while. But at the end of the day, that's just it's the Band-Aid fix for you.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we've seen the effect of technology replacing core. Totally lost my train of thought. Sorry. Core aspects of our lives. I mean, Japan's crisis of reproduction, where men are essentially just looking to technology to replace women.
By the way, Jacob, it's tilting a bit.
Which
the stand for the mic. I don't know if you need to correct the weight distribution. Mikey, please go
is
on.
First of all incredibly based, but also, I mean, you will find a significant portion of the population who will let themselves spiral into pure degeneracy and essentially let a huge portion of society collapse over convenience and an inability to self-motivate. You talk about a generational gap, which I completely agree with.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it is because of technological advancements, especially internet.
Yes.
You can find a lot of validation from millions of people who you have no connection to other than you all have the same exact issue and you all tell each other that it's okay, instead of being forced to surround yourself with people who all encourage you to work towards one certain goal.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, actually, right? Even when you find people who disagree with you on the internet, right? The average response is, well, you're fucking dumb. Why would you ever think that? Why are you sharing this? Fucking get off Facebook, right? There's such a divide, just not just America, but just the world in general, right? Because even though we're more connected than we ever could have imagined, right, with the internet, in reality, I mean, because we're able to communicate instantaneously, right? The value of personal connection has diminished drastically, if that makes sense. I mean, people lack the interpersonal skills that people used to have 50 years ago, right?
Because you don't have to have those personal skills
exactly,
anymore.
Right? I guarantee, right, Mikey, right, your parents, they probably have social skill sets that I can't even like imagine that people our age have.
Oh yeah, I mean they're very different people. My dad and I are more or less similar now, as far as just meeting a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
You know, I shoot a lot of pool, and I've run into a lot of complete strangers that I can make friends with easily. But there's to your point, there's a broad spectrum of interpersonal relationships.
And not only that, I'd also say that the average individual in, let's say, our folks' generation, right? They just have other skill sets that they just have because, you know, it was something that they sought to just learn the skill set. Like my dad, for example, right? You know, he knew how to paint cars. He knew how to maintain vehicles. He was a salesman. He owned a business. He had so many different skill sets. He was an avid reader. Like, he's the type of man that you wouldn't like unheard of in our current generation, probably, right? Same with your dad, I would just imagine. Same with your father and your father. All women are the same.
Pretty much. No difference.
And that's where
Once
this
you've seen
podcast
one of
gets
them, you've
canceled.
seen all of them.
This is where we get canceled.
Once you've seen them
But it's the
you've
same
seen
thing
them
with women, obviously, right? Just the average individual back in our parents' time and their parents' time, right? They had to learn these different skill sets. They had to achieve things that not just for, you know, their work, but personal, you know, lives, right? Nowadays, right, for us, it's just we don't really need to. We don't have to go out of our way to seek knowledge through a library or, you know, learn through a mentor. We just look online, right? And it's like we have the answer for that in the moment, and we don't care anymore.
Yep.
You know?
But even then, we don't do that because we just get online on Instagram and we see a story from the guy that we like follow,
Yes.
and like we take that as our news outlet. We don't actually do our own research. We don't do the due
Absolutely.
diligence of understanding the subject ourselves. We just come to the conclusion by seeing someone else's little video and saying like that's our news. At
As
this point,
opposed
we don't
to
know.
this podcast, which is always 100% true and
It's
accurate.
never
you can rely
wrong.
on us.
All the information we're
100%
giving you
for all
is-
of our news.
All the information we're giving you is accurate, and you should only use us as your news source.
If you
right.
use anything else, it's fake news.
It's true.
Run. Abandon this podcast. We have failed you already.
It's episode 1.
I know.
How can you be so
Like and subscribe.
like
for
and
more.
subscribe?
Please like and subscribe. Mom, can you please like this? I really need it.
Because no one else is going to.
I need to, you know, get money together for the next down payment of my car.
The whole thing he said about women, like all women being the same, you're the one exception.
Yeah,
'Cause you
Mom,
subscribe to
Mom, I
us.
love you, Mom. Please, you're the exception. But yeah, no, I'm glad we really got to talk about, because again, I had a great conversation with Mikey about this, right? I'm glad that we, all four of us, got to talk about it and also shared this with our parents, basically. I mean, we don't have an audience, but
We don't have parents.
no, and this is fantastic. Like, for me, the whole purpose of this podcast, right? And I truly believe in this, right? I think that, you know, people can find some value in just four idiots talking about shit that they probably are not qualified to talk about, right? But regardless of how this goes, I'm happy we're doing this, right? I genuinely am, because the whole thing for me with this is that I wish to talk to people who probably know a lot more about certain things than I could ever hope to know on my own, right? And I just love talking to you guys. You guys are my buds.
Hey, y'all. Freaking.
I don't have any
Get your
alcohol
glass
left.
up. Get your
I
freaking.
kind of have
cheers.
the
I'm empty, but I'll drink water.
Alcoholic.
see, and I kind of have the similar perspective to you. It's one of the few things I look forward to in the middle of the week. I'm like, hey, we're getting together. We're gonna go ahead and film this, and we're gonna make something out of it. And it's just something that I just look forward to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because
This should
for
probably
people
be the
who
end
don't
of it,
know,
yeah.
I have a D&D game I have to get to at around a certain.
Because speaking
Which is
of
why we all,
degeneracy,
speaking of degeneracy,
what do you fucking mean? Dungeons and Dragons is the shit. So guys, parents, Thank you for watching this. This is the very first episode of the Couch Gambit podcast. Yes, there was probably some cringe things about it, but you know what? For those who are watching the very beginning, I'm happy you're part of this journey. I really am, and I appreciate it. God bless to all of you. Have a good evening. Or day, whenever you're watching this.